Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Triple F Shooting. Today we're going to be looking at conversion revolvers, or at least this is going to be a part one video because we're going to separate Remington and Colt. The revolvers that we're going to look at today are new production guns. They are not old black powders with like a conversion cylinder in them. That's a whole different topic. These guns are purchased as they are from the factory, so just to get that out of the way. The first set that we're going to look at in part one is the Remington 1858 cartridge conversion. Now this is an 1858 New Army black powder cap and ball revolver. This is the cartridge conversion. From the distance you're sitting at, it's probably really difficult to tell what's even going on. So let's get into it. These things look pretty much identical. Now, a cartridge conversion revolver is just what it sounds like. We are taking a black powder revolver. I shouldn't say black powder, I should say cap and ball revolver, where you can see we still have nipples on the back side of the cylinder. This is not bored through. I cannot just put one of these in this gun. So the loading process is very long and tedious for this, but at the time, at least in 1858 when this came out, I got 6 shots of .44 caliber that could really do quite a bit of damage, especially compared to a single shot pistol. So very cool for the time. But in 1870, and if you guys have watched the other videos, you'll remember this thing, Smith & Wesson releases their new model American. This is a number 3, basically just saying what size the frame is. But this gun not only took cartridges, but reloaded extremely quickly. So this came out in 1870, so we're post-Civil War. We can put large bore cartridges in a simple to load and very effective handgun. Get that out of the way. So, again, post-Civil War in 1870, we've got a whole bunch of these things floating around. So, actually in 1868, Remington came up with a cartridge conversion for that revolver. That conversion, I'll flash a picture here because this is not exactly the same, but that conversion had bored-through cylinders so that you could load a cartridge, and then added an ejector rod housing of a sort, we can call it that. But first thing we're going to do is get out and show how long these things took to load compared to a cap and ball revolver, which there's no contest. This one's a whole lot faster. All right, so as you can see, the differences in loading are enormous. So real quick, we'll get into what actually facilitates all that. The black powder cap and ball revolver that you see, I'm gonna have to stop calling it black powder. All these guns at that time were black powder. Smokeless powder was not a thing. I just have a tendency to call this black powder and refer to that as a cartridge gun. All black powder, this is cap and ball. So at the time, to run a cap and ball revolver, as you can see in the reloading video, I have to pour powder, put a ball, ram it home, and then cap the backside of my cylinder. Now that would have been sped up considerably if you were using this for military service, or even a civilian at the time could very easily purchase a cartridge. Now a cartridge isn't what we think of like this, it would be a paper cartridge. So that would have been flash paper wrapped around the bullet, with the back side of that paper being full of powder. So instead of measuring and pouring powder, putting the round on and ramming it home, I would just put that whole piece, one unit in there, and ram it. So that would speed it up considerably rather than measuring, pouring, all that. But even that is very tedious compared to the cartridge gun, where I just open a loading gate, half cock, and load my rounds. In order for that to be able to be done on this gun, a couple of things have to happen. First, I have to cut off the backside of the cylinder where these nipples are. If I've got all that extra length back there, it kind of messes with the length of my round. Nothing really stacks up as it should. So that's going to get cut off completely so that I can put this guy in there, and those are going to get bored all the way through the same size, instead of large part of my chamber here and then narrow down for that primer to sit on. Another thing that doesn't necessarily have to happen, but it's nice if it happens, is I kind of need some way to get those rounds back out of the gun. Now in the cylinder conversion kits that you can buy for these guns, you have to take the whole cylinder out of the gun, which this one is the easiest by far to do that. All I have to do is drop my ramrod, pull, I'm going to try to do this without throwing everything, pull my cylinder pin, and then roll that cylinder out. So with an 1858 Remington, that's not bad. So with a cartridge conversion cylinder style, I would then take the cap off, punch all my rounds out, put the cap, or reload, put it back on, and then dump it all back into the gun. Now doing it like this is probably not going to be as quick. Well, you guys are like stupid lucky. I've never done it that fast, so good for you. You got to see it go well. But that would be a cartridge reload if I went with the cylinder style that you can buy now. Again, still need to use black powder, but if I chop all that distance out, now I need to either increase cylinder length or install a loading ring. So you can see that I have a ring behind the cylinder that includes a loading gate that takes up that extra space where the nipples and everything would have been, and now everything spaces out correctly and I can load my cartridges. You can also tell on this, there's not really any way to see the rim. Once it's in there, I can't really see it. So telling if you're loaded is not quite as easy on this thing as it would be like on a Colt single action or any of those cartridge conversions, but still very neat. Let's get out and shoot these things so you can see if there's any real difference between the cap and ball or the cartridge conversion. I'll give you a spoiler, there's really not a whole lot of change. The cap and ball revolvers were very effective. These were just a lot more convenient, and by going to a cartridge, I don't really have to worry so much about this getting wet. If this gun gets wet while loaded, I may have a lot of problems. If that powder gets any moisture in there, it's not going to go off. There's an excellent video by InRange where he actually takes a watering can and douses a Colt cap and ball revolver and attempts to shoot it, and you can see the results there. I would definitely check it out if this interests you. But let's go shoot these things, and then we'll show that unloading process and kind of how they stack up.
That's good. Go.
that went way high. We can do it again though, because I have ability to reload. There it is. Alright, so as you can see, when I finish firing my black powder revolver, everything's out of it. It's just kind of there, ready for reloading. With a cartridge revolver, I have to have a way to get rid of that brass that's now stuck in my gun and very empty. So, because this is a black powder revolver converted to a cartridge gun, this is a little bit different than what you'd see on an 1873 single action Army. So still going to go to half cock, I still have a loading gate, but now I have to drop my ramrod arm, which contains my little punch out rod. I'm going to close that so I don't stop my cylinder up. I'm going to manually go to each and manually punch each out. I do not have a spring return on the 1858 cartridge conversion revolver. And now that I'm closed, one thing I have to remember to do, I'm going to drop my hammer and everything, I have to put that ejection rod back in its place and its little cutout so that it can't go anywhere when I start shooting again. Alright guys, so as you can see from firing, loading and unloading, a cartridge conversion would be far more desirable, at least in my opinion, than running cap and ball. Oddly enough though, as far as the factory was concerned, 130,000 of these cap and ball 1858 New Armies were produced. Only around 4,000, just under that number, were actually ever converted by the factory. So that does tell you that not everybody was worried about it. At the time, that would have cost somewhere around $3 or $4, which was probably, I don't know, about a third to a quarter as much as the gun itself costs. So for most people, you're not out there doing like, you know, assault work with your 1858 cap and ball revolver. So not maybe the most important thing, but definitely an interesting transition in history from going from our cap and ball over to conversions. Now, in the part 2 of this video, we're going to go over the Colt conversions. So we'll look into the Richards-Mason conversions specifically. Stay tuned, and we will see you in the next episode.